I am happy to name this ship the Queen Mary.
Hello, welcome aboard the RMS Queen Mary. My name is James, and I am your tour guide on board this beautiful lady called the Queen Mary. The Queen Mary was owned and operated by the Cunard Line. Since 1839, Cunard and the British government have had a contract to deliver mail to and from North America. Plans to build the Queen Mary and the Queen Elizabeth began in 1926. These were to be two of the biggest and the fastest passenger liners ever built. Construction began on job number 534 in December of 1930 at John Brown Shipyard in Clydebank, Scotland. But work on the ship stopped 1 year later because of the Great Depression. Eventually, the British government decided to give Cunard a loan to finish the ship if they agreed to merge with their rival, the British passenger ship company, the White Star Line. They built a ship called the Titanic, that beautiful ship that was not supposed to sink, but it did. Finally, in September of 1934, the Queen Mary was named and launched. Now, many people assume that a ship is launched on its maiden voyage, but actually, a ship is launched even before the engines or the superstructure, which is the upper deck, is added. Until her launch, the Queen Mary was only known as job number 534.
I am happy to name this ship the Queen Mary. I wish success to her and to all who sail in her.
We're in this area that is today called Piccadilly Circus, named after the famous traffic circle in London. This was the social and the shopping area for the first-class passengers. Directly in front of us is the Austin Reed's men's clothing shop. The woods in here are Indian silverwood gray with Indian laurel bands. The artwork above is called a frieze. A frieze is a highly decorative band that decorates the tops of buildings or walls. It is plaster reinforced and then pressure wax treated. Maurice Lambert designed this frieze. It is entitled Sport and Speed. And as you take a look at the figures on the frieze, you would notice that they are all in motion. Much of this area here in Piccadilly Circus looks much the same as it did, except the floor color and the floor pattern have changed. The original interior decking consisted of materials composed of cork and rubber so as not to be slippery when wet. Believe it or not, the waves could actually reach as high as the promenade deck windows out here and break through into this room. This room on the port side was the first-class tobacco shop. The woods in here are cedar woods from Honduras. This on the starboard side was the William H. Smith bookshop. The woods in here are Macquarie decor, a West African wood, also known as cherry mahogany. Please follow me in this direction. My family, this room here on your right-hand side, the starboard side, was the first-class children's playroom. Now I say to each of you, notice the proximity of the first-class children's playroom to the proximity of the observation bar. The parents would come, drop the kids off to play, and then the parents in turn would go and play. The observation bar was a popular gathering place during good weather because of the beautiful sweeping view of the bow. But in bad weather, no one would go inside because sometimes during rough weather, the bow of the ship could actually begin to plow down into the waves, down into the waves. You're going to hear me say that again. That's a promise. The observation bar is semicircular in design. It fills the forward end of the promenade deck. It is 34 feet from center line with a maximum width of 70 feet. The arc of the room is scattered with 21 windows. The bar is placed against the forward bulkhead. Above the bar is a painting by Alfred R. Thompson entitled The Royal Jubilee Week. It depicts the celebration of George V's 25th year as king. There's a railing inside that is sculpted from Burma Bright, a white metal alloy by Austin Crumpton Roberts. It is modern in design. It depicts figures and beasts interspersed with beer barrels. Has anyone heard that the Queen Mary is haunted? Good, I see a show of hands. But I say to each of you, the most powerful spirits on board this ship is located here in the observation bar and lounge. And after this tour is over, feel free to come back and partake of these spirits. My family here on your right-hand side was the first-class music room. Now, let's say you were on board the Queen Mary during the 1930s. You were a musician or a solo artist, and you wanted to rehearse or practice. Then you would come over here and do so. All of the furniture, the china, the silverware that you see in this room is original to the Queen Mary. This way, please. You have just entered one of the most beautiful rooms on board the Queen Mary. This is the Queen's Salon. The passengers would come into this room to socialize with other passengers or just to listen to music. As a matter of fact, the entire theme of this room is music, as reflected in the etchings in the mirrors over the two outside fireplaces, as well as the bronze reliefs over the doorways and over the stage. Maurice Lambert, whose work we saw up in the main hall, sculpted these bronze reliefs. They are entitled Symphony. At the aft end of the room, in each corner, are bronze statuettes. On your right-hand side is Bison by Alfred J. Oakley. On your left-hand side is Cowboy and Bronco by Alan Howes. Also during the day, there will be an organ recital in this room and perhaps a pre-recorded classical music program. Sometimes the ship's orchestra would play favorite selections throughout the day. Now at that time, dinner was never ever served in this room, but promptly at 4 p.m. each day, tea was served. After the tea was served, they would play games such as bingo.
19. How are you all doing? Shall we shake the bag? Yeah. Shall we? All together, and you will. Blind 20, 2020. Blind 60, 60, 60. 19, 19.
After the games were played, the couches and the chairs were pushed to the side and the carpets were rolled up to expose the oak parquet flooring. Thus, This became the first class ballroom. And the ladies and gentlemen of the first class in their beautiful tuxedos and gowns could dance their way across the cold North Atlantic. This ship has been heralded as the ship of beautiful woods, with good reason. The ceiling is madser birch. The walls are maple burl. The pillars are cherry mahogany. There are 1, 2, 3 fireplaces in this room. All 3 of these fireplaces are electric, as this was done as a fire prevention measure. There is a uniqueness about all 3 fireplace mantles, and all 8 lighting urns were carved from the very same block of golden onyx to give it the very same color and the very same grain. You see, they were meticulous about what they did in this room. Directly in front of you is the second largest piece of artwork on board the ship. It is entitled Unicorns in Battle by Alfred J. Oakley and Gilbert Bays. It is a carved gesso panel tinted silver and gold. Gesso is a process by which artists use plaster of Paris mixed with glue, which is spread onto a surface to be painted or gilded. The design is carved into the wood, covered with gesso, and then covered with a gold leaf paint on a cream background. Now, you will notice there are cutout sections in the middle of the mural. What do you think they are for? That is correct. There were actually movie projectors behind this mural. When those sections were opened up, a film was projected here to the aft end of the room onto a screen that was set up on that stage. Thus, this became the first class cinema. The promenade deck offered the passengers a protected view from the cold North Atlantic that lay 65 feet beneath them. They spent many leisure hours on these teak wood decks, whether they were relaxing in their lounge chairs or exercising by walking the entire length of the promenade deck, which is approximately 1/4 of a mile. Now, there was one person on board the Queen Mary who did not use the promenade deck for relaxation. That was British Olympic runner Lord Burleigh, who was on board the Queen Mary for her official speed trials in 1936. He ran 1 lap, 400 yards, in his entire evening dress, which was his tuxedo and shoes, in just under 60 seconds. The Queen Mary is 1,019.5 feet long, 118 feet wide, 185 feet high, containing 12 decks. She offered 22 first-class suites, 328 first-class staterooms, 18 first-class public rooms, accommodating 815 first-class passengers. In second class, with 303 staterooms, 9 public rooms, accommodating 787 second-class passengers. In third class, with 303 staterooms, 6 public rooms, accommodating 583 third-class passengers. She weighed 81,237 gross tons. She carried 2,000 passengers per crossing with a crew of 1,200. And you know, they needed all 1,200 of those crew members because everything on board the Queen Mary was about first class. Speaking of class, I shall now attempt to explain to you class distinctions on board the Queen Mary. Contrary to popular beliefs that all first classes are located at the top of a ship, that all second classes are located at the middle of a ship, that all third classes are located at the bottom of a ship on board the Queen Mary? No, 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 no. That is not the way it goes. Class distinctions on board the Queen Mary are determined by smoothness of ride. So therefore, first class on board the Queen Mary was located in the center of the ship, from top to bottom, because it offered the smoothest ride. So, ladies, gentlemen, where do you think second class would have been located? Yes, that is correct. Here, at the aft end, or the stern, or the rear, or the back of the ship, from top to bottom. It offered a smooth ride, not as smooth as first class, because the second class passengers had to contend with the constant vibration of the engines directly beneath them. And third class would have been located where? Yes, at the bow or the front of the ship. Now, the only problem with being in third class and being at the bow of the ship is that sometimes during rough weather, the bow of the ship could actually begin to plow down into the waves, down into the waves. Can you imagine if you had just eaten a meal? This way, my family. The Royal Salon, when the ship was actually sailing, was the first class smoking lounge. The unique thing about the first class smoking lounge, when it originally opened, it was for men only. And the ladies would come over later to have a smoke with the guys. During World War II, this was a hospital ward. Here on the port side, they had a women's ward of 16 beds, an officer's ward of 16 beds, a mental ward of 2 beds, and acute medical ward of 20 beds. On the starboard side of this room, they had troop accommodations for 147 standee bunks. Standee bunks are beds that are stacked 3 to 5 high. You and I have the luxury, when we go home in the evening to go to sleep, should we desire, we can turn to our left and go to sleep, or turn to our right and go to sleep. But when you got into the standee bunks, you went in sideways. So if you went in sideways on your stomach, you slept for 8 hours on your stomach. Or if you went in sideways on your back, you slept for 8 hours on your back. Because the next bunk, whether it was above you or below you, was about this far from your face. And you did not have a large turning radius when you were sleeping in the standee bunks. Oh yeah! They also had what was called a warm bunking system, whereas a soldier would sleep in a bed for 8 hours and get up. Another soldier would sleep in that bed for 8 hours, and the beds never, ever got cold. My family, we shall now leave the Royal Salon and head to the Verandah Grill. Welcome to the Verandah Grill. The Verandah Grill is actually not a restaurant. Many people think that it is a restaurant, but this is used for special occasions and for special occasions only. When the ship was actually sailing, the Verandah Grill was for the first class passengers and only for the first class passengers. And the first class passengers could only dine in the Verandah Grill once per crossing. Now, the unique thing about the Verandah Grill is, if you take a look at the murals here, there is a mouse in this room. Doris Zinkinson is the lady that painted the murals here in this room. During World War II, the Verandah Grill was used as the officers' quarters. And being that this was the officers' quarters and their office, in the process of doing so, the officers would actually stick pins in the artwork that you see here. They would use tacks, they would use nails to put the information on the artwork, thereby damaging the artwork here in this room. After the war was over, Doris Zinkinson was recommissioned to come back into the Queen Mary and retouch the artwork. Doris was so upset that her artwork had been damaged during World War II that she left the Queen Mary a little mouse. And if you take a look at the artwork and you look into Marie Antoinette's hair, there's the head of a mouse sticking out of Marie Antoinette's hair. As we are here in the Verandah Grill, my family, please notice, take a look at the railing here and look at the detailed etched glass here in this room. Miss Doris Zinkinson was very specific about the work that she did here in this room. Oh yes, and there's one other thing. There was a great controversy about this room. You see, Doris Zinkinson insisted when she was commissioned to do this room that the carpet in this room is black and that it would remain black at all times. And as you can see, the carpet is still black here in this room. We're now standing in front of what today reads as the Queen Mary's Royal Wedding Chapel. When the ship was actually sailing, this was the second-class smoking lounge. And almost every weekend on board the Queen Mary, there is a wedding here on the ship. Is there anyone in this group that would like to speak to the wedding coordinators? I can hook you up. Welcome to the second-class main lounge. This was the center of social activities for the second-class passengers. The same activities that were provided in first class were also provided here in second class. Later on in the evening, they would show a film in this room. This room could accommodate 288 second-class passengers. And later on in the room, this became the second-class ballroom. Here at the aft end of the room, on a stage, sat an orchestra that provided the entertainment in this room. Now, my family, this room has not always been as large as you and I see it today. You will notice there are archways on either side of the room. At one time, those archways contained frosted glass, and on either side of the frosted glass was the second-class promenade deck, where the second-class passengers could relax and smoke, read and smoke, have a drink and smoke, exercise and smoke, or just smoke. You notice I said smoking quite often because at that particular time, smoking was the cool thing to do. Please notice the paintings in this room. These paintings are by Miss Doris Gilbert. Miss Gilbert named these paintings Dance Throughout the Ages. But guess what? They are unusual in the fact that they are not painted on canvas, but instead painted on leather. As a matter of fact, everything that you see in here that is eggshell color, silver, green is leather. This room has more leather in it than any room that I have ever been in my life. Here we are. This was actually the suite of Sir Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of England, whenever he was on board the Queen Mary. My family, Sir Winston Churchill actually helped plan the D-Day invasion right here in this suite. This particular suite is the most requested suite on board the Queen Mary. As a matter of fact, this suite is constantly occupied. This room was the Queen Mary's originally first-class dining room, now called the Grand Salon. This is the largest room on board the ship. In fact, it is the largest room ever built in a ship, 3 decks high and extending the entire width of the ship, 118 feet. There were also private dining rooms in each corner. Altogether, the room was capable of seating all 815 first-class passengers at one sitting. This room could also be seen in the movie Being John Malkovich. The Queen Mary's first-class passengers enjoyed a 7-course meal. However, if you desired something not listed on the menu, you were encouraged to make your request known to the head waiter. We have record of only 2 orders the ship failed to accommodate. One was for Dr. Pepper, which waiters thought was a type of health drink. It was not available in England. And the second was a request by a group of oil tycoons for 4 rattlesnake steaks. The chief steward served baked eel, while the waiters waved baby rattlers. Today, this room is used for private meetings and banquets. It is the home of our famous Sunday brunch. Our award-winning chef fills the entire dance floor with food stations. A harpist serenades diners during Sunday brunch and is served from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Reservations are preferred. The Queen Mary began her maiden voyage on May 27, 1936. She continued her transatlantic crossings until World War II. The ship was detained in New York. In 1940, the Queen Mary was actually drafted into service as a troop carrier, and after being refurbished to her original peacetime elegance, she once again resumed passenger service until 1967, when in the early 1960s, all transatlantic lines began to realize a loss of revenue. This was due to a loss of passengers because jet air travel had become the primary mode of international transportation. In May of 1967, Cunard announced the Queen Mary was for sale, and the city of Long Beach was the highest bidder with a mere $3,450,000.
Now today marks the end of this ship, and this particular ceremony, it marks the end of this great vessel as a ship. She has finished sailing the oceans, and from henceforth she will become what technically and legally I think is called a building. But what a magnificent building she is going to be here in Long Beach.
The ship began its final 39-day voyage from Southampton, England to Long Beach because the Queen Mary was so large she could not pass through the Panama Canal. So therefore she had to travel around the coast of South America and Cape Horn. The Queen Mary arrived in Long Beach on December 9, 1967. Construction began on the ship to convert her from a passenger liner to a floating hotel and tourist attraction. The Queen Mary opened to the public in May of 1971. On April 15, 1993, the historical liner was added to the National Register of Historical Places. On behalf of the RMS Queen Mary, I personally want to thank each of you for coming on board this beautiful lady, looking at her artwork, her architecture, her decor, learning of her history, and feeling her ambiance. I say to each of you, thank you, and please tell someone else about the Queen Mary. Do you know why? Because she is also now part of our history. Ladies, gentlemen, thank you for coming on board the Queen Mary. Until next time.